Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, and as always, alongside me is Dr. Dave. How you doing, Dr. Dave?
I'm doing well, Dr. Joe. Thanks for asking.
That almost seems sarcastic.
There's always a little bit of sarcasm when I talk to you.
Okay. All right. Well, so enough with all that small talk. We just are excited to be here because, as we mentioned, previous episodes, our focus has changed a little bit on our podcast, and we just want to make you aware of that at the very beginning. So, again, Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast is for everyone because every one of us is on a journey. But like we said before, we want to be more intentional this year. We want to really identify who we're trying to help, and that to us to us means it's that mid-career professional. Maybe they feel stuck. They may not feel like they've been progressing over the years, or they're just ready to change and do something different. So we want to help them maximize all those things they have, their experience, their education level, all those things that can be applied to the next level or the next step in their career. So just wanted to identify again same content, but I think, and everybody can benefit from it. But I think, again, we want to focus on helping those mid career professionals. So, along with that, as we mentioned before, too, we want to put more tools out there to help you with your journey. So, last week we introduced the Johnson Podcast Weekly Challenge Journal, where we want you to participate, be actively pursuing things that you can change, things that can help you along your journey. So that's the first thing we've introduced. Hopefully, you'll download that and start to follow along in each week and add that content as we move forward. The next two tools that we provided for you is a mid career readiness assessment. So you can download that assessment, find out kind of where you are to be a quick 10-question test or assessment on where are you today in your career? Are you ready to move forward? Or are there things that you need to continue to do or improve upon to be ready to move forward? And in the third tool that we use, it's a continuation of that readiness assessment. And it's actually the Mid Career Leverage Diagnostic. So that takes you into much more detail on how you can improve, what you look like as it is today. And we want you to be honest with these assessments and tools so that it will paint a better picture, a clear picture of where you are and where you want to go. So those three tools are going to be available in the description. Again, download them; they're free. But we want again to provide you with tools that are actually going to help you move forward. So I know I just talked a lot, but I just want to make sure we got that out there so that you're aware that again we're being more intentional. We want to make sure you're successful, and so we're going to provide these tools. So with that, I know Dave's been chomping at the bit to get started. So uh, as we stated before, here is our attempt at again reaching that group of people that we believe we can assist probably the most, and that's for this topic. We're going to start off with the discipline advantage after 40. Right. So what does that mean? And again, this can apply to someone that's 30. It could apply to somebody that's 25. But again, 40 is kind of the sweet spot where we think they may be mid-career, ready for a change and things like that. So Dave, what is the discipline advantage after 40?
That's a great question to throw out there. And like you said, it is for everybody. Typically the average corporate career 40 is kind of that mid-career level. If you're in the military, it could be less because if you joined
Right.
at 18, it could be a few years less. Maybe even that 32-ish time. So, but the discipline advantage after 40 is, I think at that time we're in our mode. We've got our groove. We know what we're doing. We do it consistently, and we just know what we're doing, but we may not know where we're going. So that discipline advantage is really what it is. The self-discipline. You've reflected, you know what you're doing, and you know how to do it, and you're very good at it. So when we think about that discipline advantage, I'll use myself as an example. In my 30s, I was going to college, my undergrad and grad, and I was in a different mindset. But when I started my doctoral program at 40, my mindset shifted completely different way. I mean, I had much more focus, I had much more self rigor, I had much more self awareness, hence the self discipline and the discipline we're talking about. And when we pull that thread on discipline after 40, we can look at there's different advantages. And I'll kind of approach this from the reverse perspective of not utilizing technology enough or vice versa, or rely upon technology too much. We have to have that balance because there are some things that we still do that cannot be automated, that we need to have the discipline and the attitude towards using the tools that we're familiar with that are non-automated. But conversely, we also need to have the discipline to utilize the automated technology that's become available the last couple of years that's being heavily relied upon, and the discipline to make sure that we progress ourselves and our knowledge base and our skill base to take advantage of those tools.
Right. So, as you just mentioned, um, by 40, you typically have developed a ton of habits. And I'll just use that as an example. If you've been working at, say, the same job or organization for a lot of years, you probably have a routine from starting when you wake up in the morning. You got an alarm clock set, you leave the house at the same time, you get established at your job or whatever you're doing, and you start that daily routine, right? You've built that mental, repeatability, that discipline in doing the same thing over and over again. So I think about even your career. Me as an aircraft mechanic for 20 plus years, got into the routine of these are way I approach the problem. There's a problem with the aircraft. This is how I approached it. So when we talk about the advantage of that discipline, that's what we're referring to, is that you probably built up enough muscle memory, enough repeatability, tasks that you got built in. It gets to a point where you don't even think about it anymore. And it also an example of it. You can test it by following your routine, as you normally do, but then say the next day, do something different, and it'll throw your entire
Yeah.
plan or your day off because you've done something different. Because again, that power of that discipline of doing the same thing over again. And that's why I think what Dave is touching on, that if you don't, maybe not use the technology, or you're relying too heavily on the technology, that you could get stuck in that. Well, what if it doesn't? I don't have it anymore, or I don't have access to it. Then what do I do? So that's kind of what he's talking about or referring to, is what I'm thinking, is that we can become too dependent on that, which it may not be a good thing. But the idea that you've again established these discipline, these things you've done over and over again, even in your career as you progress, maybe through your career doing the same job, but going to the next level in that career, you remain disciplined enough to retain the information that you already have, but then acquiring new knowledge that's going to
Yeah.
apply to your business or whatever you're doing. So just having that discipline of repeating those things over. And sometimes, and somebody asked me this years ago, why do you do the same thing over and over again? And that's what it really is. It's that discipline of, it may not appear like it's, you know, making a change. You won't see it daily or, at a quick rate, but just the discipline of doing it over and over again, you're going to reach a level that again may not be obviously visible, but it will be visible. So if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I like, when we put the advantage piece into place, it really is about the the ability to be able to change and adapt and grow as needed
Right.
seamlessly. I mean, that's really what it's about. I mean, it's about your growth and the way you approach your growth and development after 40. It's a different perspective, it's a different attitude, and you're more deliberate about that, and that's your advantage, is you're deliberate about your discipline, your self-discipline, your habits, the way you approach things, and the way you evolve through the evolving technologies or processes in the workplace.
Dave, and I didn't even touch on this, but like you mentioned, at 40, you went back to school to work on your doctorate. at 40, that's kind of when I had that, epiphany, or that, I don't know, midlife crisis, where I said, hey, I've done all these things, established all these things. I'm ready for that next level, that next, position, that next whatever it is. And you're right. Up until 40, everything was just hunky dory. Everything was okay. I go to work, I do these types of things. And then it was at 40 when I said, hey, is this the legacy I want to leave? It's because I've said this many times on the podcast before. I went to tried school 4 times before that, and the timing just was not right. And you touched on it before. My mindset didn't allow me to continue education. I wasn't ready for that. And again, it wasn't until 40 when I said, I've got to do it. And so, again, that discipline
That's
piece
a
of,
discipline that you're talking about.
yeah, I knew I wasn't ready, but at that point, I felt like, okay, now I'm in a position. Now my mind is in a position to accept this, to know that it's going to take this effort, this energy. And again, it comes from that experience, that knowing yourself, being prepared to move to that next level. So just having that knowledge, and that awareness that you're ready or not ready, I think is very important as well.
Yeah, and I think you cued in on something. Realizing whether you're ready or not ready is part of that discipline, a discipline of knowing that you're ready for the next task, and the discipline of knowing that you're not ready for it. And what do you need to do to prepare yourself to be ready? That's the advantage at that 40 mark. That
Right.
we've said it several times, your mindset shifts and you become more self-aware, more self-disciplined, and it's that discipline advantage that's going to carry you through. You're intentional. You're almost predictable in some ways in the workplace. you know so yeah, that's a huge advantage right there.
So and I don't, again, we don't want to discount someone else who may
Right.
get there sooner than 40, because I've met so many,
Yep.
um, new to, working, you know, people that are just like, I know exactly where I'm going. And,
Yep.
you know what? I even tell myself that when I'm having those types of conversations, I'm like, where could I be today if I would have had that discipline back then, if I would have been focused? And so, again, we don't want to discount that there are a lot of people way ahead of us and ready to move forward. And those are the ones who become CEOs and, high level executives and things like that, because they understood that, like what you just touched on, they understood that before 40. They
Mhm.
understood that long time, again, before this milestone or career mark that we're talking about.
Yeah, and to kind of push that a little bit further, you become self-aware when you're ready. And like you said, if you're young enough, or if you're younger, I shouldn't say young enough. If you're younger, you know, it's like what we're doing right now. Where do we see it with our discipline? What can we do to reach the next goal or this next thing we want to do? Some people just realize how to capitalize on that discipline earlier in their career.
Right. Well, even think about, musicians,
Mhm.
sports,
Athletes. Yep.
athletes. Yeah, they recognize that at a very young age, that if I remain disciplined, if I, outwork that person that's not working, I'm going to continue to move forward. And that's really the same idea. Again, like me and Dave, it took a little bit longer for us to get there. And so that's why I say, kudos and great job for those people that recognize that at an earlier age, because again, that potential for them, their growth is just huge, because again, they started so much younger than what we're referring to right now. But again, if we go back to that 40-year-old, and if you're thinking about where you are, again, take those, free, assessments and diagnostics that we have available to kind of gauge where you are, where you thought you might be. You may be surprised, you may be further along than you thought, or you may need to, you know put yourself in a better position to be ready to move forward. So,
Yeah, Joe, and that's a great segue into this week's weekly challenge. Our weekly challenge for you this week is to identify one area where you apply discipline well, and at least one area that would benefit from more attention to that discipline. So again, identify one area where you apply discipline well, and at least one area that would benefit from more discipline in your personal or professional life or in your career. But that's the weekly challenge, and the weekly challenge will be in the description. You can copy that description out, paste it right into the weekly challenge journal that you can download for free, and then run through the exercise for this week and start tracking your progress and your growth.
And that goes back to, rather than having just a journal every day or write down your notes, again, these are actionable things that you can start to compile and start to reflect on. Okay, so week 3 I did this, week 4 I did that, and you'll recognize again where you stand. In a lot of cases, if you're thinking about that critical self-reflection, where I am today and where I'm trying to go, hopefully these tools will help you to gain clarity
Yeah.
in those questions that you might have for yourself. So again, that's why they're there. Use them. That if they apply to you, great. If they don't, then that's okay too. But at least get into the habit of really doing that self reflection. If you're trying to go somewhere, you have to know where you are today in order to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, and that's what I love about the tools that we created because we talked about them for several months. And, that's why we created them because we wanted you, our audience, to have some tools to walk away from with that you can take action. This podcast wants you to be actionable. We want you to be more involved and deliberate about your journey. And so that's why we're providing these tools for you. Because
Absolutely.
the journal is not it's not a diary. It's a book of actions that you're taking. And some of these podcasts may resonate. Great, do it. Do the
Right.
weekly challenge. And if it doesn't resonate, then that's okay too. But at least you'll start getting in the habit of and the discipline of documenting your progress, your strengths, the areas that you need to improve on. And that's again, that can be early career, you could be late career, you could be mid career. Our sweet spot is kind of the mid career focus, but getting into these habits and using these tools that are available to you at no cost, that's the real benefit right now for you all is the podcast and then these related diagnostics and assessments and tools.
When we talk about discipline, and I'll go back to my education journey, and that's what helped me push through 9 years of earning these degrees, because initially I started, got overwhelmed thinking, oh my goodness, it's a lot of work, it's going to take me forever to get there. And it wasn't until I used a disciplined approach to get me through not just the entire program or the entire degree program, but to get me through not only the class but the week, the assignment, the task. I mean, that's what it came down to, me being more intentional about, okay, checking these things off to make sure I get to the next level. And then once I finish that level, let's go to the next level. And again, before I knew it, 9 years straight, I had earned all these degrees. I had completed that without all the tension that I had for myself, or the concern I had at the very beginning of it, because I was totally overwhelmed, thought I was going to give up until I used this approach to do it systematically. I knew what to expect. And that's kind of what we're hoping that you might do if you recognize, okay, these are my strengths. This is how I perform. This is why, because of these, things I have in place, the discipline I use, then applying those to other things in your career and in your life, I think will be helpful, because it comes down to being able to check things off, on your checklist. And that equates to success, goal achievement moving forward.
Yeah, and so it looks like we're at time. So uh, throw it back over to you, Joe.
Well, did you have any last words you want to say about, again, the discipline advantage after 40?
Just real quick, if you're in that bracket around that 40 time frame, 38, 42, whatever, just know that you do have some advantages that, you know, some younger folks may not have. They may not have developed them that discipline that you have. So make sure you use that to your advantage. Identify those areas that you have that work great, some areas that you can, definitely apply more discipline to, and that's just going to help you on your journey.
Okay. Well said. And all I'll do again is just highlight the fact that we had that journal for you, the weekly um, podcast challenge journal. We also have the mid career readiness assessment, and then finally the mid career leverage diagnostics. Again, those are three tools that could potentially help you identify where you are and where you want to go, and then help you along your journey. Because, like I said, me and Dave are still on our journey. We use something similar to this. Hey, where do we want to go? Where are we today? But where do we want to go? So that's why we're trying to make improvements here, not just to help you, but to help us as well. So, again, thanks for tuning in. Hopefully you gain something from this episode. Hopefully this new intentional content will be helpful for you. Please let us know. Again, subscribe, like, um, leave some comments about how you think this is going, or if there's tools you'd like us to create and put out there. Again, because that's what we want to do is continue to assist. So let us know, or if there's someone that may benefit more from this, then provide them the link, or connect them to our podcast. So with that, I know we've said a lot of things today about the direction of the podcast and what we hopefully will be able to provide you. Hopefully, you tune in for later episodes as this gets more polished, more tools available, those types of things. So, with that, we want you to continue being your not so ordinary you.